I've also seen an article where you talk about switching the story, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier about kind of cutting out negative thoughts and staying with the positive thoughts. So how would you suggest that a coach can work with their athletes in doing that?
Great question. I actually had an example of this, a real life example, where last week one of my former Middlesex teammates, who is an excellent cricketer himself, he's a coach, he's a similar age to me, he's playing league cricket in London, and he sent me a message and he said, I'm just, my mind's everywhere at the moment and I just can't see myself scoring any runs. Can we have a chat? Because he knows that I'm passionate about these sort of things, even though he's a peer and a friend. So we had a chat. It was only 15 minutes or so, but with him, he's experienced. He knows the game well. So, and I don't need to build a relationship with him. I know him well. So we basically got into it. And I said he was when we got down to it, he was focusing on all the negatives. He was focusing on the previous 2 or 3 weeks where he hadn't scored many runs, and he was he was living in those previous innings, which was making him feel tense, frustrated, nervous, scared, anxious. And he then put more pressure on himself. I've got to do well this week. And the language he'd use, the story he'd tell, was all being built around the previous failures he'd had. And then he was sort of building up the next innings to be the most important thing he's ever done. And and with that comes a lot of pressure. So my advice to him, and this is what I do with a lot of my players, is try and go back to a time. Try and shut your eyes and go back to a time where you were playing at your best, where you had your best innings, or you had a time where you were playing really well. What did that look like? How did you do it? What did that feel like? What were you focusing on? And try and live in that space as much as you can leading in the next few days, leading into the next game. So I spoke to him on Thursday and I said, just think it through, and every time your brain goes to the negative of I've got to get runs this week or I'm struggling, try and take a deep breath and go, I'm a good player. I know I'm good enough. I know I can handle this, and go back to the times that you've done well. Remind yourself the times that you've done well and live in that. Keep remembering that, because that creates a feeling of calm and confidence. And then so that's the advice I would give about the story, is try and go back and focus on and really live in, because you don't have to make something up. Most of these athletes will have had moments or times where they've done well. Just try and stop living in the moment where it's not going so well and you're getting so caught up in the negative, and just take yourself back to when it was good and just try and live in that, because then you'll bring that into the next game and you'll feel much, much better. And there was a couple of other things I gave, some advice I gave him, and he went and scored 100 on the weekend. So it was quite nice for him to implement them so quickly. And he said, it was really, really helpful just to change and break this sort of cycle of I've got to get runs, I'm not batting well, and just take himself out of that. And then every time, because your brain will always go back to negative. And that's what I said. It's just about being aware and going, okay, that's just a thought. It's just a thought, deep breath, and then move my attention to where I want it to be, and just consciously manage your attention.
So that's someone, right, who's kind of close to the top of the game. Would you say that for somebody who hasn't got those experiences in the sport they're trying to do, would you try and get them to have a positive story from another part of their life that they could use?
So I would try, and if they're very amateur and they're very young in their development, I would try and take all emphasis away from the outcome and say, let's just have fun and learn and develop. We're not playing for the Ashes. We're not playing. This is something I think most amateur coaches get wrong. And it comes back to a big belief of mine. And one of the reasons I'm successful in my own little sort of ride is that it's not about me. It's about the player. It's about the athlete. And whether I'm coaching a team or an individual, it's always about them. I make it about them. It's not about me. Whereas I think a lot of amateur coaches, it's about them. They want success. They want to do well. They want to progress their career, or they want to prove to someone, or they didn't have the success as a player they wanted. So they want to be a successful coach, and therefore they make it about the outcome. So if you're coaching a young side and they don't have that lived experience to maybe go back on, or they're a bit worried about the result, or they're scared I would personally just not make any talk about the result, not make anything about the outcome and just say, let's just work hard, let's have fun, let's develop, let's just learn. And who cares what happens? If we win, we win. And I sort of took that. I did coach a team in December last year. I coached the Northern Territory under-19 team at the National Carnival, and the NT generally is the worst state because it's the smallest. There's not that many people who play, and they generally lose to all the big states. But I only met the boys 2 days before the tournament started, didn't have much time with them, but they had all followed my content, so they all sort of knew of me and knew me. And so I went and met them, and my biggest thing with them was, and they're all pretty good players, they're all, in that group we had most players from the Northern Territory, but there were a few ring-ins from other states to make the team better. So some of them didn't even know each other. And my big thing with them was, boys, I'm not here to win. I don't really care if we win. I just want to help you guys get better, have some fun, and you guys have some fun. And that took pressure off them. And we pushed the team that won it, New South Wales, and we beat 2 of the other states. Because the outcome comes if you can just focus on the process. And so for me, that's how I would coach any side, whether it's amateur or professional or anything. It's just, boys, I just want you to, or girls, I just want you to give it your best. That's all I can ask as a coach. Let's train hard, have fun, learn, develop, and give it our best, and we'll see what happens.